Okay.
All right, Dave, you comfortable?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so right now, Dave and I are actually sitting in my living room watching the encore presentation of the first episode of Better Call Saul, getting ready to watch the second episode of Better Call Saul, but I think we have to make a couple corrections on things that we didn't quite pick up on the first episode.
Yeah, I just got here and set up, and Flood's like, let's record this, so I don't know what's about to happen. So let's go.
Okay. Remember the whole scam that they had going on where the twins were going to get hit by the car?
Right.
Right? Me and my wife, Kristen, watched it again today, and it was a different car that the kids threw themselves in front of.
Okay, so I thought I mentioned that in the podcast.
I don't remember
while we were watching it. I thought I mentioned that it might be like a similar model. It's not the exact car.
Right, but
then I went on to say that she was like the housekeeper for the people.
Right. So she's the housekeeper, but here's the thing is when you watched Uno, the first episode, you can distinctly it shows Betsy, who's the woman that meets with Saul in the diner with her husband.
Right.
It shows Betsy getting into that car, and then the kids jump in front of the... So by coincidence, they actually jumped in front of a similar model or same model car, the same color. It never showed what happened to Betsy after she left the driveway.
So it was Betsy in the car pulling out of the driveway.
It showed Betsy getting in the car, and then Saul leans over, looks at his phone, calls the twins, and then it cuts to the twins, and they jump out in front of a brown station wagon.
Okay.
Baby shit brown, as they called it.
Wow.
Right?
Nice.
Right? I think that totally passed us up. I think you were on the right track there. But watching it again today, I was talking to my wife. I'm like, how the hell did we miss that it was an old lady getting into the station wagon?
Right.
But we didn't because it showed Betsy getting into the station wagon. Then the twins just happened to jump in front of another car, the same make and model and same color. So it's a hell of a coincidence. But that's how he ends up at Tuco's grandma's house.
Oh, well, nice catch. Nice catch.
Yeah, not bad. And that was all my wife, Kristen. Good job, Chris. Thanks. And also, we talked about the match. We actually thought it was like some sort of misprint.
No, I should have corrected you. I caught that right away. It's just the fact that it says McGill. And he wants to separate. Is that what you're going for?
Right, yeah, that's totally what I was going for. So yeah, I totally botched that one. I was probably like on my way to get a beer or something and kind of passively watched that.
I just let it slide because it's what it said was the point, but
right. So
the actual point is that it says McGill. He wants to differentiate himself from the law firm.
Well, he doesn't
or his brother wants him to separate.
Yeah, the Howie, the guy from the law firm who met with Chuck, kind of was pressuring Chuck to get Saul to change his law firm practice name.
Right.
And I didn't fully pick up on that. For some reason, I thought that it was a typo or something, or he just...
No.
But nope, it was totally just... they're looking to differentiate the names for name recognition and such. So I totally botched that, but I caught it today, so...
Nice. Well,
I think I'm actually all caught up now on my stupidity for episode 1. So I'm ready to go for episode 2.
As they say in the biz, that's a couple of nice snatches.
Yep. Nice. All right, Dave. So real quick before we sit down and watch episode 2, a couple questions for you.
Yep.
One, real quick prediction.
I keep leaning forward because my microphone is slipping.
All right, I'll make this quick. Screw the question. Do you want a beer?
No, I'm good.
All right, let's go.
Customers are gone and your store is on the rocks. Spread around the gas because it's time to torch the stock. But you gotta move quick before you singe your own hair. Who knew there was a homeless guy sleeping in there? Better call Saul. You better call Saul.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is It's All Good, Man, the Better Call Saul podcast. I'm Brian, and I'm here with my co-host, as always, Dave. Dave, how are you doing this evening?
I'm feeling pretty good today, and I am ready to go.
All right. Dave and I also co-host a Nothing Important podcast. You can find that at www.nothingimportantpodcast.com. And we're also partnered up with calltosaul.com. So if you want to hear our podcast on there or see any insights, rumors, news, spoilers, you name it, go to calltosaul.com. All right, Dave. So that was the second official Better Call Saul episode.
Yeah, I really dug that one.
There's a lot of different pacing on that one than it was the first one, right?
Yeah. Kind of focused more on fewer scenes.
Fewer scenes, but a lot more development, a lot more setting the stage for what's to come.
Yeah, it had a lot of the Breaking Bad style montages, you know, and it was like a cycle, like a Groundhog Day type thing, and then it ends when the coffee cup finally falls over. I thought that was pretty cool.
I was cracking up at some of the character consistency as well. Tuco making food once again.
Right, yeah.
Quite the gourmet cook. It'd be awesome. I hope that's like an on-running theme because apparently, from what I'm seeing, I'm seeing that there's going to be a lot of interaction between Saul and Tuco. So I hope extravagant meals are definitely a staple of Tuco's character, and that's something that we see every time we encounter him. Because it's a pretty interesting dynamic, too, if you think about it, because Tuco is insane. He's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, he's completely emotional, completely irrational.
But the man can cook.
Right. The man can cook. I almost thought he was a little bit too impressionable in the exchange with Saul. Like every suggestion Saul had, it was almost like he was talking to a little kid. But I guess that is kind of Tuco's mentality.
Right. He was playing to his ego, right? Like that's obviously been a character trait of Saul is he's really good at seeing people for how they are and manipulating them. Mm-hmm. And he totally saw that he could manipulate Tuco. So he was playing to his ego where Tuco, fancies himself as this king. Remember he made up when he was the FBI, when he said that he was the FBI agent and he said that the codename of the operation was King.
Kingbreaker.
Yeah, Kingbreaker. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, I'm a king. Like a king.
That's right. They're after me because I am the king.
Absolutely. So that's great. So that's a lot of insight to how Saul starts honing those skills.
Right. And the first time he weasels his way out of like that life-threatening situation.
Right.
With using his words and
absolutely, yeah. and then barters down the punishment from from death to one broken leg each, which was absolutely awesome. That was one of my main concerns was how are they going to because prequels typically suck, right?
Right. Yeah,
prequels
usually.
Always because we talked about shoehorning stuff in.
Right.
Whenever anybody needs to make a prequel. A lot of times they don't make it as organic and they try to shoehorn in all these different elements that were established in the storyline that came after the prequel. And I think so far they've done a great job of making it feel organic and true to the characters and not just doing something for the sake of doing something. Like the slower pace of today's episode really allowed them to organically develop those traits.
Right.
As opposed to just like a one-off where Saul would give like a smart line and then all of a sudden the character comes out and it's like, oh yeah, that's totally me. Like, no, there was a definite build up there. Like they let it ride.
Yeah. And you're starting to see that he is not Saul Goodman yet.
No, not yet.
Definitely not there yet, but he's
but you can see
there.
the wheels are turning.
Right.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. Especially the part at the end where he says, I'm a lawyer, I'm not a criminal. Mm-hmm. But in Breaking Bad, Jesse says, you need a criminal lawyer, and he's talking about Saul Goodman. So Jimmy McGill's not a criminal. Saul Goodman's probably going to be the criminal. Right,
yeah. Like the little light bulbs are starting to go off, right?
Yeah, because he even turned it down. He turned down the finder's fee, because he was just trying to get a client. He wasn't looking for the payout from them. He wanted the payout through court.
Which is the first instance of the finder's fee. Remember when he talked to Walt in Breaking Bad, when he was helping him launder the money, there was a finder's fee for everything.
Right. And he was all about it at that point,
Right. So Nacho gave him the idea for the finder's fee. I really like how they're taking their time planting the seeds.
Yeah.
Like they're not just trying to rush through it because everybody knows the character. They're really taking a deliberate pace to build it up. They're not going for the gusto, I guess. Like hey, you know what? We know you guys, who this character is, but we're going to treat it as if you've never seen this character before, which is an absolutely smart thing to do. There's no there's like foreshadowing and little character traits, but there's no like, wink wink moment where it's like, oh, that all makes sense.
Right.
It's more of like, oh, that must be the stepping stone of how he gets to what we saw in Breaking Bad.
Yeah, like the montage where he's getting frustrated as being a public defender and doing all these cases for $700 a pop.
Petty with a prior.
Right,
and that was just over the case in that instance, right? The kid stole a piece of pizza, but the prosecutor really wanted to hammer the kid because he was a petty with a prior.
Right. I got the impression it was different cases against the same prosecutor. You know, I don't know if that's like a city attorney, how that works, but it was like,
really? I thought
it was all these little BS cases. And every time he's just like petty with a prior.
Yeah.
He finally broke him at the end. He finally got a deal at the end after trying on all these different cases.
Right. Yeah. So he's sparring. We talked about how he was kind of shadow boxing in the bathroom last episode. And what I took from that montage is like a fighter, right? A fighter just doesn't go into the ring and start boxing and punching people in the face, right? There's a lot of shadow boxing. There's a lot of sparring that you do with partners.
You gotta get your character, your emotions built up.
Yeah, you got to build your chops. You got to take a couple licks, and that's essentially what he's doing. That bathroom appears to be his locker room. And he psychs himself up. He does the "It's showtime," which is from what, Dave?
It was a movie reference for All That Jazz, which I have not seen. Thank you, Google.
Right. So like he's building up his persona. He's honing his skills, and it's great. We're 2 episodes in, and we have yet to see Saul Goodman. It's just straight up still Jimmy McGill. Yeah, absolutely. I also like how we talked about actually before we started recording this episode too, the station wagon, right?
How they cleared that up?
Yeah, how they cleared that up. Actually, yeah. And so my wife, Kristen, remember we were talking before, she said, well, maybe it's kind of like how there's like the GMC model of the S10 and then the Chevy S10, but they're known as different things, right?
Like the GMC is the Jimmy and the Chevy is the Blazer.
Yeah, exactly. And Kristen was 100% correct.
Yep.
The Betsy's car was a Mercury with a license plate 401 PND, and the car that they jumped into the windshield on was a Ford with a license plate 493 BHS.
Ah, there you go.
So
I was trying to catch that, but my eyes deceived me.
Right. So essentially, right, it is the same make of car with minor differences.
Right.
And you were onto something because when we were watching episode 1, before episode 2 started, you were looking at the emblem on the front of the vehicle, and you're like, well, it's a Ford.
On the back, it was the emblem on the back was the Ford, and the front had no license plate. I couldn't remember if Betsy's car had a front plate, but this car definitely had no front plate.
Right, but we were looking for
it was the envelope, yeah.
Yeah,
envelope.
For the details, and they are the same model car, and which is true because different you use what, Firebird and Camaro, right? They used both the same color red, and it's essentially the same car. It's just like minute different features, like the shape of the taillights and such, and that's totally what happened. So, giant coincidence, right? And that set everything into motion. So I hope episode 3 on the next episode of Better Call Saul, it actually shows him revisiting Betsy and her husband.
Yeah, they're going to be involved, and it appears, I don't know, he talked about de-escalating things, and it showed, I believe it was Nacho in a holding cell, or an interrogation room. Right. Whatever you call those things with Jimmy.
Yeah, and he kind of flinches at him.
Yeah.
Right? But what I'm getting at is, well, hopefully episode 3 we see what happened in between Saul staking her out and the twins jumping on the car.
See, I don't think you're going to get that. I think they're going to leave it as a simple case of the wrong car.
I would bet that they do something really menial. It's probably something really mundane.
I smell a wager.
Smell a wager?
Yeah, someone going to put their money where their mouth is?
Dude, I have like $3 in my wallet.
Well, not actual money, but
That's good because I don't actually have $3. But I'm just saying I could see a scene play out where it shows Betsy getting into her car, driving down the street. She makes a left-hand turn, and then Tuco's grandmother just happens to make a right-hand turn on the right-hand street.
It's very possible.
Classic example of wrong place at the wrong time for everybody involved. She got her windshield smashed, and the twins jumped through the wrong windshield and set everything that we saw tonight in motion.
To go even deeper. And more speculative.
Yes.
You could say that because Betsy had a routine. This is supposed to be Betsy's always at that spot at this time.
Right.
Maybe this is the one time she diverted from the routine to go do something involved with this embezzlement case that they're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And then gets caught up through that avenue.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, good call. Right. So like maybe she's feeling a little bit heat or things are starting to pressure build up and maybe her husband calls her to meet her somewhere and she veers off the path and then Tuco's grandmother, divine intervention just happens to come down that road.
But then that gets Tuco and Nacho involved in, trying to get the money off them, and it's just going to get deep.
See, that's actually something that I think done the wrong way could have totally been a shoehorned coincidence.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like in it's like in action movies how there's always like some major coincidence that always saves like the protagonist. Like a door opens unexpectedly when they're leaning against it and they fall through and like somehow avoid getting shot.
Yeah.
Right. And every time I watch action movies and something like that happens, I'm like, oh, that's so stupid. Like that's totally an act of God. Deus Machina, I think is what
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, there you go. Deus Ex Machina. Say it again.
Deus Ex Machina.
Okay,
God in the machine.
Okay, well, everybody pretty much knows what I'm.
Let's just butcher Latin phrases while we're at it. Yeah.
There's a reason it's a dead language, Dave. But you know what I mean? Like, and that's a perfect example of how it usually comes off insanely stupid and insanely forced. But I think that the way that they're pacing and setting up the series so far, I don't feel that that's a shoehorned circumstance at all.
Yeah, because they are using this as Jimmy McGill's character development. Mm-hmm. The whole scene where he barters the punishment down and talks his way out of dying. Basically, right. Yeah, that's. It wasn't just like a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Here's Tuco.
Right. I also loved how when Tuco manages to get everybody inside his house, and there's the salsa spill on the floor. Mm-hmm. We were kind of laughing at the grandmother because everybody has a grandmother like that. Like you're like, okay, I'm doing stuff. Like I get it. Like she just keeps reiterating the point.
Yeah. Get the club soda. Get the club soda.
Right. Yeah. And he's like, yeah. I got it.
Like, go watch your stories already.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So it shows like a really strong family dynamic, and hopefully that plays into, hopefully this season we see Hector.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. The family dynamic is as evil and vicious as Tuco is. He still cares about his family. He's taking care of Hector in Breaking Bad,
right?
And his grandma, and the fact that this is his grandma, and I believe Hector was his great uncle, brother and sister. Maybe I wonder if they're going to make that connection at all, and then that would bring Hector into the mix without forcing it.
Yeah, and then he took Saul and the twins into the desert, and that was a lot of very Breaking Bad feeling cinematography there as well, right?
Yes,
absolutely. Right. You noticed some things as they were laying on
the faraway shot. As like when they first meet, that scene is the camera angle's far away, stuff like that.
I feel that so far they've done a great job of establishing that it is in the same universe, because there's a lot of little signatures there that you notice, especially after watching Breaking Bad. Binge watching like we did on Netflix. It might not seem as much like had we just watched it, week by week by week, season by season, but if you watch 5 seasons of a TV show over the course of 2 weeks, you start to notice little ticks. And I think for those of us that kind of binge watched it, we're kind of a little bit more familiar with those ticks. And then now watching Better Call Saul, you notice little things like the weird camera angles and how it pulls in and just the cinematography in general.
I was also looking to pay attention to maybe his the alias he comes up with when he tells the FBI lie to get the cutters off of his finger.
Agent Steele.
Agent Jeffrey A. Steele. FBI. I mean,
what's funny is we talked about, I believe it was on episode 3 when our buddy Tim was here when we were still debating whether or not Jimmy McGill was Saul's birth name. Mm-hmm. And our friend Tim made the comment, well, if you're going to think of a generic ass name,
right?
Like what more is generic than Jimmy McGill?
James McGill.
Right. And then he pulls out, what was it? Agent
Jeffrey A. Steele.
Jeffrey A. Steele.
And I even wrote down in my notes, I wrote Jeffrey Steele, but then Saul repeated Jeffrey A. Steele. So I adjusted my notes to throw the A in there.
And it was great seeing him, again, work his magic. He, like Tuco said, you got a mouth on you. And he's like, thank you. But, at first I didn't really know where they were going with that, right? Because they were insisting that he was some sort of informant, FBI, some sort of cop,
Right.
and then instead of sticking to his guns, and he's like, I really don't know shit. All of a sudden, he's just like, oh no, yeah, I'm totally FBI.
Yeah, like he just knew that. Well, for one, I like the fact that Tuco says something about this is working because we're getting attention from, law enforcement, but they don't say what it is.
Right.
And then, yeah, he just knew, like, he's like, if I just admit and tell him what he wants to hear, he will physically remove himself from my area for a minute.
Right.
And then we can kind of reset and start over again.
Like he'll just kind of back off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was funny too, because it actually got really intense, especially when they were putting the calipers on his hand and it looked like they were going to cut his finger off.
And I'm sitting there going, does he have 10 fingers in Breaking Bad?
I'm like, is he missing like part of his finger? I don't remember that in Breaking Bad, which again is a testament to how they're actually doing the show, because typically when you're watching a prequel, you're like, well, he can't be losing a finger because 5 years after this, he has all of his fingers. But the way that they pulled it off, I was like, man, was he missing a finger? Like, was there
Exactly.
was there like some sort of weird scene where he touched something and he was missing a finger, and this is now how they're explaining that retroactively?
No, he talked his way out of it.
He did talk his way out of it, but he made a hell of a deal for those kids.
Yeah, which is funny because, as you pointed out, it's common knowledge, it's all Saul's fault, or it's all Jimmy McGill's fault.
Yeah, all that.
And,
all that.
The kids get their legs broke, and eye for an eye. You call my grandma a biznitch, and I wound you for 6 months and cause you.
Oh man, and that was such a great scene where Tuco would just not let up on maiming the twins.
Yeah.
Like he as much as Saul was trying to push him in another direction, Tuco thought he was giving him suggestions on how to kill him.
I'll give him a black eye. He's already got a black eye.
He was like, "Oh, I get it. You want me to slit their throats?"
Colombian necktie.
But that's great. I really enjoyed that scene, and that dark humor is really coming through. It's really subtle. It's weird because it's subtle, but it's very noticeable, and it fits so well.
Yeah, and it's the thing that I noticed with Breaking Bad. I don't think we've touched on is the fact that like that kind of humor, it's really up to the reader. It's not a universal humor. Not the reader, but the audience. But it's not a universal kind of a humor. Like, you got to be kind of twisted to laugh at some of that stuff, but it's really funny.
Right, yeah.
If you're twisted enough to enjoy it.
And some of the little beats where it's just all comedic timing.
Yeah.
Like during the montage, Saul kept going back to the coffee machine. It kept filling up the coffee. And the last time the coffee cup falls over and it pours the coffee, and then it pauses for a second, spurts, pauses for a second, and pours some more, and then it just kind of says fuck it and walks away from. That reminded me of the scene in Breaking Bad where they had Crazy Eights locked up in the basement. Okay. And when Walt can't bring himself to kill Crazy Eight, he slides over a jug of water, then a jug of water, then a sandwich, then a pail, and then it waits a few seconds, and you just see a roll of toilet paper slowly roll towards him. And then they one up it once again. A few more seconds go by, and he slides the hand sanitizer to him. It's excellent comedic timing in a drama.
Yeah,
which is really what you need, because face value, without that, these shows would be incredibly depressing.
Well, yeah, and it's it's like any other art form. You have to have the dynamics and you have to have the contrast, because repeating the same vibe over and over again, you just get numb to that vibe.
Right, absolutely. And then we got to see Chuck a little bit more.
Yeah, in a spacesuit.
Yeah, a space blanket. Yeah.
Take the space blanket off, Chuck.
See, we talked about last episode that it has to be a mental thing. There's no way that is some sort of physical malady. It has to be a mental thing.
I
think
I remember he says something about, did you see the research with lizards and electromagnetic fields? Mm-hmm. And I didn't look any more into that. I might have to do that for the next episode or something. What the hell was that about?
Right. But he was so worried, Saul came in drunk, and he was so worried whether or not he grounded him, and then he found his cell phone.
Just randomly chucked it into the yard.
Right.
Yeah.
And the brother dynamic between the two, we talked about how there's a little tension in the brother dynamic, like Chuck is obviously the super good guy, but is like some weirdo about electromagnetic fields, and Sal is obviously not the most stellar of people, but they care for each other.
Yeah.
But you can see some of the riffs, like right in the first episode, they had an argument about what to do and how to handle his hiatus from work and like he should sell out or
financial situation.
Yeah. Who's really taking care of him. And in this one, we got a little glimpse of Saul actually being kind of tired of his brother's shit.
Right.
Because he was like, take off the space blanket.
Yeah.
And then Chuck kept refusing. He's like, take off. He said it like 3 or 4 times, like, take off the space blanket. And I kept like thinking like that's when they're going to reveal what the hell is actually wrong with him. Like I thought Saul was going to say, look, we both know that you're just being fucking crazy. Like none of this shit, like having cell phones and shit, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like,
the thing about the milk. Like, I was wondering about that because the look that was exchanged was like, can we add some milk? And then Chuck gives him a look like, you know why we don't have milk. And then Jimmy gives him like oh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if like he's one of them people that are against like pasteurization or they don't have a refrigerator so the ice can't keep the milk cold enough to sustain it, or if he just has some,
or if he's just like, this is part of the sickness, and Saul's just like, oh yeah, it's part of your sickness,
Right, yeah. Like you can't drink fucking milk.
Sorry, Jimmy, not Saul.
I actually wrote in my notes lactose intolerance.
I put milk question mark. What the hell is that about? I'll be damned if there's no milk in my house.
Man, what if like milk becomes like the major precipice of the entire series? Like a jug of milk like somehow causes the collapse of everybody.
In the middle of the desert, too.
Right.
Milk was a bad choice. I like the fact that this is a show that takes place in the past. Mm-hmm. So I guess technically a period piece, but they're not throwing stupid winky wink references to that time frame.
Yeah.
But they did throw in the Beanie Baby reference, and I did get a kick out of that. Because you notice, you're like, there's a whole bunch of stuffed animals, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, this is the time when Beanie Babies were popular. And then when he shakes the one, you see the little tie heart in the corner of the screen.
Oh, man, that's a good...
Yeah.
That's a good call.
That's I like those kinds of little
details, right?
Yeah, little details.
Yeah, because when he was talking to the receptionist, like you could see over her shoulder on top of the file cabinet, there was just like a big stack of stuffed animals. And yeah, I was like, oh man, that chick really likes stuffed animals.
Yeah, but it wasn't like the Ford Esteem thing. They zoomed in on the word esteem.
Yeah.
Like you're going to get this joke, which you didn't get, but I did. Thank you. But yeah, the Beanie Baby thing, like stuff like that, it's all kind of in the background, little like the tie thing. You could barely, it's like half of the tie thing. It wasn't even the whole heart.
Right. Okay, and then towards the end of the episode, we finally do get to see Sal's actual living quarters. He went from, he passed out on Chuck's couch.
Right.
But towards the end of the episode, you see him walk through the
nail salon.
The nail salon. And he like shifts his desk, put the chair on top of it, and he pulls a fold-out couch. So we finally got to see where he lives.
And he pulls like his pillow out of the filing cabinet.
Yeah,
and like paperwork in there.
Yeah, like for some reason, even since the first episode, like I kept like whenever they showed it, I kept looking at like the tiny TV on top of the file cabinet. And I was like, why is there a TV on top of the file cabinet, especially like a shitty, really old one? But like for all intents and purposes, Saul is destitute, and that is his apartment.
Reverse spoiler alert, I knew that.
Yeah.
Somebody was mentioned somewhere that he lives in his office to start.
And I do like how he stole the water, or he stole the water cup so he could put liquor in it. Because he scolded him in the first episode.
It's like an FU to the owner who's like, cucumber water for customers only.
Finally got one over on somebody. And then his customer, Nacho, she knocked on the door, and he was just absolutely astounded that he had a customer, because when they were walking in, I remember I said to you, I'm like, I bet he finally has a message.
Yeah.
Because they set that up where it looked like, in the first episode, there was no messages, and he was just like frustrated and can't believe nobody's calling him. And I thought that's how, I thought finally he was going to have a message, but no, he actually had a walk-in. Yeah,
he had a visitor, and like Nacho said, I'll find you. Mm-hmm. And he did.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a YouTube comment.
Right. From Stefan Goathart. So if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, I apologize. Stefan Goathart, off of YouTube, offered a theory about one of the Better Call Saul villains. He actually sent this about a week ago. He mentioned that in season 2, episode 8, when Walter and Jesse kidnap Saul. Saul, before he hears Walter cough, thinks that it's Ignacio and Lalo, right?
Ignacio and Lalo, I believe would be the pronunciation.
I'm terrible at pronouncing stuff. But he mentions that he is afraid.
Right, and he's afraid of Ignacio and Lalo, and then it was released before that Nacho is going to be one of the villains, and Nacho is a nickname for Ignacio.
Right.
But he also, the other names I caught was Gonzo and Nodos were the guys out in the desert.
Gonzo and Nodos.
Yeah, Gonzo and Nodos. So there was no Lalo to our knowledge.
Right.
But there definitely was an Ignacio.
Right. And so Stefan actually called it because he said, are we finally going to see who Ignacio is? Mm-hmm. Because there is an episode, which I believe is coming up, named Nacho, which is the name of next week's episode.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right. And that's who was in.
I haven't looked at episode names yet. I'm kind of
right. Next week's episode, episode 3, the title of it is Nacho, and Stefan was spot on.
Yeah, balls on, as we say sometimes.
Absolutely right, because that's who it was in his office, and he said, "I'll find you when you figure out you're in the game." Right.
Well, yeah, and he's the one that kind of saved Saul's life too. When he's like, he didn't believe the FBI story.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, no, this he's telling the truth one way or the other. Let's find out which one really is the truth, basically.
So Saul owns him.
Yeah.
Or Saul, So Saul owes him.
Owes him his life, basically.
Yeah.
And those 2 punk gingers owe him his life, too.
Yeah.
Or their lives.
Punk ass gingers.
I have a red beard. I can call people gingers. It's cool.
So next week, according to the previews, during the credits, it looks like Nacho gets busted for something, and he's probably going to call in that favor for Saul, because remember, Saul kept turning him down and offered his lawyer help, though. Like, hey, if you need legal help, I'm your guy, but I'm not a criminal.
Well, that makes sense because he's, from that little teaser scene where they're in the room together.
Oh, yeah, where he's getting interrogated.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. So what are your predictions for next week's episode, Dave?
Well, for one, I'm kind of mad that we have to wait a week now.
Right.
And I'm going to be really paying attention to the opening credits, because one parallel we have drawn with this show is that the opening sequence is different so far.
For every episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're listening, anybody listening, go back to episode 1. And for the theme song, we used the Junior Brown theme song, and every time we've recorded an episode, Dave has used a different section of that song to open our show, which is funny because it changed, and it was kind of Dave being funny, like an inside joke between us.
Yeah.
At first, he didn't think I'd notice. But
yeah, I just did it to see if Brian would notice. Honestly.
Right, yeah, it was just a funny thing. And then today, we kind of like cheered to ourselves a little bit because the opening sequence was completely different than last night's episode.
Yeah, and Breaking Bad, as far as I remember, had the same title sequence every time. It was
like the puff of
the
smoke,
periodic table things with the smoke behind it,
and like the weird
boom, boom, boom. Yeah,
right, a little weird noise. So I'm going to call that one a win. We totally called that would happen, and we were just hinting towards people.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
we were just ahead of the show
with our insider information.
Mm-hmm. With us being jackasses.
That's not a video because I just did that look like. Okay. Other predictions for next week is that I just think that it's shaping up is that the embezzlement county treasurer case is going to be the big crux of the show. Like, that's going to be the big thing.
Like, one way or another.
Right.
Right? Because Saul himself said that was going to be my case. That was going to give me a name, and that was going to put me on the map. But now they've set it up.
By the way, score one from me about the whole why he was nervous when he was signing it. You thought it was about the paycheck. I thought it was about the notoriety. Mm-hmm. Am I right on that?
Right, yeah.
Win.
Yep, you got that one. You got that one.
We have to just point out whenever we're right over the other person every time that happens, by the way.
Right, absolutely. And so, yeah, one way or another, that is going to be Saul, Jimmy McGill's big moment. Mm-hmm. Right? So
we also didn't see Hamlin at all in this episode, correct?
Maybe he'll be on maybe he'll be on the opposite side of Saul.
Hamlin?
Yeah. Maybe something happens with the embezzlement case to where he represents the opposite side of Saul.
I like that.
Right?
I like that.
Not too bad, right?
Like the whole because it seemed like Chuck's whole do you want your own identity? It's not so much you want your own identity. It's I don't want your identity to be associated with my identity.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of like the big I don't know if David versus Goliath or a different.
So that's going to be my prediction. That's going to be the big showdown that's set in place. Is that on one side it's going to be Saul representing his client, and then on the other side it's going to be Hamlin represent their client, and that'll be Saul's big win.
Okay, devil's advocate, it's going to be Chuck.
You think it'll be Chuck?
I'm just throwing it out there so I look like a genius if it happens.
Okay. We'll put that on the prediction board.
No, but yeah, I like that prediction. I really like that prediction.
All right, so that's what I'm going for. So make sure that you hit us up on Twitter or Facebook or our website or the myriad of other ways to reach us. SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, all that good stuff. Let us know.
Put it on a flash drive and give it to your friends. We don't care.
Carrier pigeon, smoke signals, however you want to send it to us. Make sure to send us your thoughts, your predictions. Like Dave and I say, this show is just as much yours as it is ours.
Participate.
Participate. Join the discussion. Everybody who has joined Twitter in the last 24 hours, thank you. All the crazy people on iTunes blowing our numbers up, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Make sure to leave us those awesome 5-star review. I'm totally campaigning for it.
I like the 1-star reviews and the 2 stars because that just means you're listening to what the hell we're doing.
Mm-hmm. We are a 2-star show. Now our scores are just going to plummet.
Well, when Tim's around, we're a 3-star show.
Right, yeah. Well, averaging 1 star per host. All right, so I think that's it, Dave. That concludes episode 2 of It's All Good, man. We'll be here next week. Make sure that you subscribe.
That's right. Call us idiots, call us geniuses, whatever. Just call us.
You heard me. You better call